Shalom, shalom. Hayawam Tawab, which is good day, and knock Nawaha a bar. Yasha al Hawlakin Ma'atham. Kasha Wai Baharakha Wakaksha Yahawah Bahasham Yahweh Ma'amath, which is truly hey with the Hebrew Israelites coming to you week in and week out through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh. I appreciate you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, West Indian teachers, Israelite foreigners, Nacham Atam, Kaya, Hamalakwat Hashemayim, Korah, repent, yea, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. First and foremost, before we get started, I'm going to say, Call Halayim La. Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shah Bahasham, Chahakwadash. A double honor to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone that taught us the truth and rule well. And much respect to you, bros, that are pushing the truth with all righteousness. And sincere shalom, shalom.
Shalom.
Pretty much we're going to go into the title of the lesson, The One Who Controls the Language Controls the People. And we got a couple articles. And I don't want to run to Zazam on Naipah. Lord's will, this is a beautiful edification through the spirit. Baharakha. All right, so we'll go ahead and start that. I'm starting this.
Right.
This is an article. It reads, it says, do the languages we speak make us smarter? I'm going to skip down. It says, the language we speak affects the way we think from space, time to numbers. We might be smarter when we think in some languages, which is the we're talking about the Hebrew. That's the purest language on the planet, anywhere, when we talk about like the English language, that's one of the most low vibrational languages on the planet. So it says, imagine a tree walking around a classroom while reciting a poem. I'm injecting a strange new idea into your mind at this moment, and I bet you haven't thought in it this way, but I've just made you do it through language. Pretty much how you see the world, how you view stuff is the language that you speak. It says, Baba Kashab, could you get Bonsarat 17 and start at the top?
Go ahead.
I'm gonna keep going in this and let me know when you get there.
Go ahead.
It said, it isn't new that the language we speak represents what we think. But what about the way we think? All right, so let me keep going. It says, now look at this picture above and tell me where you left your phone. The answer in your mind is probably that they are to the left of your glasses, which it's a picture pretty much. It's got the coffee, the glasses, and the phone. And it says they're on the left of your glasses. This is an everyday example of how we code spatial location. Interestingly enough, if you ask the same question to people in other cultures, you probably get different answers. In a faraway Aboriginal community in Australia, people will respond with something like this. The phone is in the northwest. The indigenous language there is Gugu, some with the Y. Doesn't have relative directions like left or right, which in Hebrew you have left and right, But just going into that, it's better spatial direction in the language of Hebrew. You go ahead with that.
This is Sirach, Rabban Sirach, chapter 10 and verse 17, right?
Yeah. 17 and verse 1.
Oh, Salaki, 17 and 1. This is Sirach 17 and verse 1. It says, Yahweh created man of the earth and turned him into it again. He gave them few days in a short time, and power also over the things therein.
You keep going.
It says, he endued them with strength by themselves and made them according to his image, and put the fear of man upon all flesh, and gave him dominion over beasts and fowls. Verse 5, it says, they received the use of the 5 operations of Yahweh, and in the 6th place he imparted them understanding, and in the 7th speech and interpreter of the cognitions thereof.
The cogitations thereof. So when we talk about cogitations, all right, cognitive, what's cognitive? Your mind, how you think. So how you speak reflects on how you think. That's why it's important to do positive self-talk. That's how powerful language is. If you think, the scriptures say, I'm gonna get this real fast. This is Salat. This is Mashaliah, Proverbs chapter 23 and verse 7. It says, for as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. Eat and drink, saith he to thee, but his heart is not with thee. Which is ultimately going into I'm applying this to how you think, because how you think, the cogitations, what's in your mind is gonna come out in your speech, and we are like vibrational creatures, to a certain degree. So we have to watch how we talk, you know, because the body senses that energy. You know, just like when you say the word can't, Esau understands that, hey, if you control the language, you know, you control the people, how they think, you know. So if you put C-A-N, C-A-N is I can do something, you see. But if you put a T up there, that word actually derives from incantation, you see. So by saying, oh, if someone can't do this, that's a spell, you know, you pretty much say, you put limits on something that someone can do. You know, Esau understands this. So this is why he puts it in his language. You know, if you take Hebrew, you know, you put different characters up there, it pretty much throws off the language. And that's essentially what English is, you know, just a very watered down version of Hebrew, you know, to where the numbers actually go back to the English numbers go back to Arabic. You know, it's a whole bunch of confusion. You know, and that's essentially what this man has done. You know, he controls language, the lingua franca. I got that definition real fast if I can get it real fast. It says lingua franca. It says a language that is adopted as a common language between speakers whose native languages are different. And everybody speaks English. All right. So that shows you who's in power, you know.
Mm-hmm. Let me continue on to that.
That was pretty much the point. The connotation thereof comes out of your mouth, you know, like how you think, going back to that picture, you know, you gonna explain it in detail, you gonna think about it like you like, all right, it said a tree, aitazah, all right, a tree. That's how you say tree in Hebrew, you know, or in English you'll say a tree, you see, but we ultimately don't know what tree go back to, you know, like it can go, you know, it can have a totally different vibration with what it's meant, you know, to have you, because the Hebrew word for tree is aitazah, which means to be firm, to be rooted, you know. So that's what you'll think about when you think about a tree. If I say, hey, you know, think about this, a whole bunch of stuff is gonna pop up depending on the words that you put in your mind. If you say tree in English, the definition that you're gonna get is the one that's in English, you know, and pretty much it's gonna limit what you know about that particular subject, you know, whereas in Hebrew, it's a more complex way of thinking. You know,
Hey, Salakia, and if I add one thing, you know, and that's why the apostles always tell us to look into words, especially, you know, into the Hebrew, because, you know, when you look at these Christians, these Catholics, these people that read the scriptures, you know, but they only read it, you know, in the English language, they don't have, first and foremost, they don't have the spirit, you know, of Yahweh Shah to understand it. But second of all, you know, you have some of these scholars that do the digging, that do the research, you know, allow them understand some of the things that we believe in. You know, they understand that America is Babylon the Great. They understand some of the parables, right? But again, they weren't given everything. But that's the difference between the languages. You know, you gotta go into the Hebrew, you gotta go into the Greek to really get that proper understanding.
Right. I got a word real fast. This is the word shapath. All right. Tongue is shapah. So like, tongue should be shapah, I believe, but language is shapath. All right, and it says H8194, and it says from H8192. It says the sense of clarifying a cheese strained from the way. You see, because the scriptures say, could you get Boss Rock 27 and 27 and you can start verse 3.
Okay. This is the book of Sirach, Ban Sirach, chapter 27 and verse 3. It says, unless a man hold himself diligently in the fear of Yahweh, his house shall soon be overthrown.
Okay, keep going.
Verse 4, it says, as when one sifteth with a sieve, the refuse remaineth. So the filth of a man in his talk.
Right. So your tongue is what strains ultimately mind, or that's essentially how you communicate what's in that person. You keep going.
Verse 5, it says, the furnace proveth the potter's vessels, so the trial of man is in his reasoning.
Right, and in his reasoning, how does your reasoning come out? Through your talk. You know, I think the next verse says that.
Verse 7, it says, praise no man before thou hearest him. Salakia, praise no man before thou hearest him speak, for this is the trial of men.
Right, that the language, you know, the words that you use, it's gonna show what's inside, what's in your mind, what's in your spirit. But I'm gonna get this too. This is Shabbat. So like Shapath. H8193, and it says through the idea of termination, the lip as a natural boundary. All right, going back to it said the refuse remaineth. It says by language, by implication, language. It says a margin, water, a cloth. Because like if you pour water on a cloth, it kind of separates the trash and everything. So it says border, brim, brink, edge, language, speech, talk. You see, going into the language. But then those two work hand in hand. The words that you use and then also what you're thinking. So you got to be mindful of what we thinking and also what we speak. Because words carry an energy. When you think about a certain word, it gives you a certain type of energy. That's why positive self-talk is very imperative. But we can go ahead and get into the article. I don't want to digress to too far off the point.
God. You want to pull it up?
Yeah.
Go on. Pull it up real quick. This is from scientificamerican.com. It says how language shapes thought. It says the languages we speak affect our perceptions of the world. So it says, I am standing next to a 5-year-old girl in Pampurah, a small Aboriginal community on the western edge of Cape York in northern Australia. When I ask her to point north, she points precisely and without hesitation. My compass says she is right. Later, back in a lecture hall in Stanford University, I make the same request of an audience of distinguished scholars, winners of science medals and genius prizes. Some of them have come to this very room to hear lectures for more than 40 years. I asked them to close their eyes so they didn't cheat and point north. Many refuse. They do not know the answer. Those who do point take a while to think about it and then aim in all possible directions. I have repeated this exercise at Harvard and Princeton and in Moscow, London, and Beijing, always with the same results.
Right, I got a quick precept because ultimately the education and the language that's taught in America and various different parts of the world, it goes back to witchcraft, you see, but it's really not smarts at all. It's not education or wisdom at all. The scriptures say, I'm gonna get two real fast. This is Bonsarrat chapter 19 and verse 22, because a lot of times you ask these scholars questions, they they'll tell you some bullshit or they'll just say they don't know flat out. This is Bonsarrat 19 and 22. It says the knowledge of wickedness is not wisdom, neither at any time the counsel of sin is prudence. You see, so ultimately, what they pretty much push is a lower version of witchcraft. For example, when you go into in high school, you got chemistry, but chemistry go back to alchemy, which alchemy goes back to Ham. That they ultimately was into that nastiness. Ham be over in Africa, sniffing the ass and whatever else they do.
Right.
I got another one. You go ahead.
Oh no, you got it.
Okay. This is 1 Corinthians chapter 1 and verse 20. It says, where is the wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the disputer of this world? Hath the Most High not made foolish the wisdom of this world? Because you'll ask, even though they're not supposed to be in the Holy Land, but they took in that same study, they took somebody that was studying the modern Hebrew, while it has a lesser vibration of the Paleo Halashwan Kadash. They still had spatial information. They had time information, and they also could locate better than those that read from left to right, because how you the words you use and how you read also plays a part in how you think. Because that's why a lot of times when we was in school, you'll see Jake or different Edomites, they'll read from right to left those anime books, and you'll think they was weird, but it kind of read from right to left actually helps your brain, because when you read left to right, it's harder to concentrate and gain the knowledge that you need, so when you read right to left, it does something with your brain to where it's easier to understand,
That's right. I also want to make mention of that point too, because everything works, at least how the earth rotates is from right to left,
Right.
And the sun, the sun, at least that's what I mean to say, the sun, when it goes around, or when the earth is rotating, pretty much the light comes from the east and it sets on the west, so that's going from right to left. That's a natural order of things.
Right. And it show you that when we was in the land, essentially we was at one without power, you see. But then also we was connected with the earth, because like that girl, I don't know if she was I don't know what language she spoke, but pretty much no matter where, later in the article, no matter where they was facing, whether they was facing to the south, the west, or wherever else, they're telling them to point out a different direction, and automatically they was able to get it. And that's because how they think, reading right to left, pretty much a having a working knowledge through the years, that way they're able to do the different things that they was asking to do in that study, because language does have that effect, again, going back to the title, the one who controls the language controls the people, because you control what people think, what they do. The words have the power to essentially provide energy, and through a word, essentially it again controls the masses, and that Esau understands that. You go ahead, go back to the article.
Right. I may say also one thing. Like you mentioned, whoever controls the language controls the people. Esau knows what he does with his language. It pretty much this English language is pretty much the part of making you separate yourself from pretty much the nature. You see it by how civilization is right now. Everybody's separated from nature. Nobody knows the proper way of how things work and operate. The stars, the moon, the sun,
Right.
Even just nature itself. Everything has its cycles. Everything has its own vibration. And operating here in this quote unquote modern world, has pretty much left everybody detached from the earth.
If I could mention too, they'd be like, "Oh, why we write left to right?" When you was in school, that was always a question you would ask your teacher, right? They'd be like, "Oh, so you don't like when you write? If you was to write right to left, you would smear the paper." That's not true. Going back to his witchcraft, I'm gonna get that real fast. This is the Volume Psalms, chapter 144, and verse 11. It says, "Rid me and deliver me from the hand of strange children, whose mouth speaketh vanity, and their right hand is a right hand of falsehood." You see, so going into their deception, if you write from left to right, it's ultimately harder, But then again, going back to the point that pretty much like they say, oh well, if you write from right to left, it's gonna smear the paper. You ain't gonna be able to understand it. They always tell you that, And as a kid, you're like, oh, okay, I understand. But no, it goes back to like his trickery, his deception.
And ultimately, right, the right side of your body too is where your power is, man. Most of your power is.
Right.
And and that's the reason why, they have you right from left to right, or even when you get on a car, they have you on the left side of the steering on the driver's side, right? It's on the left side instead of the right side. Everything is all backwards, man.
Yeah.
Can I get a precept real quick?
You got it.
This is Isaiah 29:16. It says, "Surely your turning of things upside down shall be esteemed as potter's clay." And what has Esau done? He's turned everything upside down, from the language brought to the everything, man. The way you understand the scriptures, the way you read the scriptures, everything. He turned everything upside down, and we're just breaking down more. Coming to find out more and more things that Esau is making things that's contrary to what the Most High has established. But it says, "For shall the work say of him that made it, he made me not, or shall the thing framed say of him that framed it, he had no understanding." So, that's pretty much the point, though. We'll go back to that article. Continuing on, it says, "A 5-year-old in one culture can do something with ease that eminent scientists in other cultures struggle with. This is a big difference in cognitive ability. What could explain
it?" It said, pretty much somebody that had all these degrees, and then a 5-year-old can do it with ease, and that's because they pretty much came up in the East, or they came up in some type of culture that was in the East, because they still somewhat hold fast to those customs, because ultimately it works better with your understanding. We keep going.
And you can even see that in the way they think. People in the West operate a whole lot different than people in the East.
And they say in China, pretty much like they known for like they math, and that's because like even though it's a derivative of Hebrew, it still holds like their characters are symbolic. In English, it's like, all right, you got an A, You know, we understand that comes from the Hebrew ah or Allah, you know, but
Mhm.
it's just a. You know, their numbering system is different from their lettering system. In Chinese or Mawa'aba Moab, you know, pretty much they how they do it is their letters. I believe their letters and their numbers pretty much represent the same thing, and their letters and numbers tell a story. You know,
Right. Con. But it
you
says,
you can skip down to under the influence.
Con. Under the influence, it says, around the world, people communicate with one another using a dazzling array of languages, 7,000 or so all told. And each language requires very different things from its speakers. For example, suppose I want to tell you that I saw Uncle Vanya on 42nd Street in Mian, a language spoken in Papua New Guinea. The verb I use would reveal whether the event happened just now, yesterday, or in the distant past. Whereas in Indonesian, the verb wouldn't even give away whether it had already happened or was still coming up. In Russia, the
A lot. I'll pick it up down here.
okay,
It says research in my lab and many others has been uncovering how languages shapes even the most fundamental dimensions of human experience. It says space, time, casualty, and relationships with others. All this is affected by the language that you speak because you think differently in different languages. You know,
mhm,
I'm gonna skip down. It says it's a lot. So
kind of get to that point where it says left to right or right to left.
you are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, you read that.
And it says people who think differently about space are also likely to think differently about time. For example, my colleague Alice Gabby of the University of California, Berkeley, and I gave Coop Thayor uh, speakers set of pictures that show temporal progressions: a man aging, a crocodile growing, a banana being eaten. We then asked them to arrange the shuffled photographs on the ground to indicate the correct temporal order. We tested each person twice, each time facing in a different cardinal direction. English speakers given this task will arrange the cards so that time proceeds from left to right.
Mm-hmm.
Hebrew speakers will tend to lay out the cards from right to left.
Mm-hmm.
This shows that writing direction in a language influences how we organize time.
Right. You keep
It
going.
says it says the Kuktayori or Kuktayor, however, did not routinely arrange the cards from left to right or right to left. They arranged them from east to west. That is, when they were seated facing south, the cards went left to right. When they faced north, the cards went from right to left. When they
Right.
faced east,
Because
yeah,
if you go into that, pretty much Panahakwadam, you know, facing the east, you know, because pretty much that's a default direction. Whereas if you in not England, but the U.S., your default direction is the north. The
hmm
compass always faces the north. You know, whereas like in Hebrew, it'll be facing the east. Like your default direction is the east. So leaving the south as your right, and then the north is your left. With behind you is the west. That's in the back. You
hmm
know.
hmm It says when they faced east, the cards came toward the body, and so on. We never told anyone which direction they were facing. The Kuktayor knew that already and spontaneously used this spatial orientation to construct their representations of time.
Right. So they was connected with the earth, you know, because pretty
Right.
much how else do you lay out the cards, you know, to where it's facing the different cardinal directions? Because that was already in their spirit, you know. And that's
Mm-hmm.
essentially with everything being returned to its rightful state in the kingdom, you know, that's how it will be, and it's going to be far greater than that, you know. But it's
Mm-hmm.
going back to how it was in the ancient land. Like all of this stuff was already ingrained in us, you know, where we can see how far, pretty much due to us sinning, you know, how far we've came. Because you reading from right to left to right, it's like, you know, it kind of throws off how you think about stuff. You know, again,
Mm-hmm.
giving the example of the tree, you know, and tree in Hebrew is itazah, but that's going to give you a multitude of other definitions. Like when you think about itazah, you think about wood. You think about something firm, something that's rooted. When you think about a tree, I mean, you can think about the same stuff, but it doesn't give you the same definition. You know.
Mm-hmm. Let me continue reading.
You can skip down to. I got this right here. It says, language can affect how quickly children figure out whether they are male or female. You know, so and over here, you know, this man, like, you got to be told that, hey, you're you know what I'm saying, you're a male, you know, whereas it's embedded in you, so to speak. Going into this, it says language can affect how quickly children figure out whether they are male or female. In 1983, Alexander or Slot, it's less quickly over here, you know. But it says in 1983, Alexander Giora of University of Michigan and Ann Arbor compared three groups of kids growing up with Hebrew, English, or Finnish as their native language. Hebrew marks gender prolifically. Even the word "you" is different depending on gender. It says Finnish has no gender marking, and English is somewhere in between. Accordingly, children growing up in a Hebrew-speaking environment figure out their own gender about a year earlier than Finnish-speaking children. English-speaking kids fall in the middle. Could you go to where it says what shapes what?
Let's see.
And we'll read that paragraph, get some precepts, and that be it.
Go on. It says what shapes what? It says these are just some of the many fascinating findings of cross-linguistic differences in cognition.
Which says cross-linguistic, it means pretty much across to each different languages. Linguistic, go back to language.
Mm-hmm. Con. It says, but how do we know whether differences in language create differences in thought or the other way around? The answer, it turns out, is both. The way we think influences the way we speak, but the influence also goes the other way.
Right, so they work hand in hand. What you speak, all right, it's telling your mind something. What your mind is telling your mouth to speak, you know, pretty much they work hand in hand. You know, so you got to, that's why the scriptures say, I'm going to get this real fast. This is not Bonsarat, this is Mashalia, Proverbs chapter, let me see. This is Proverbs chapter 27, 18 and verse 21. It says, death and life are in the power of the tongue, and they that love it shall eat the fruit thereof. You know, so that's why we got to be mindful of what we think and what we speak, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You keep going.
Go on. It says, the answer, it turns out, is both. The way we think influences the way we speak, but the influence also goes the other way around. The past decade has seen a host of ingenious demonstrations establishing that language indeed plays a casual role in shaping cognition. Studies have shown that changing how people talk changes how they think. Teaching people new color words, for instances, changes their ability to discriminate colors, and teaching people a new way of talking about time gives them a new way of thinking about it.
Right. So, for example, like if you take in English, it's like, all right, this is the beginning right here, like, which is my left right here. This would be the beginning, you know, whereas like the past will be behind you, you know, and then the future is ahead of you. Now, if you started over here with my right, all right, this would be the past is in the front, you know, and the future is ahead of you, you know, technically being behind the front, you know, because the front is the beginning, you know, starting on your right.
You're right. I'm gonna continue on.
Yeah, we'll finish out this article. I mean, out this paragraph, and then get some precepts.
It says another way to get at this question is to study people who are fluent in two languages. Studies have shown that bilinguals change how they see the world depending on which language they are speaking.
Right? Could I ask? Is it the same for you, bro?
Yeah, you know, it's different, especially how you talk. You know,
yeah.
Sometimes it can be a little bit confusing, especially when you're trying to talk to another person who's bilingual. You know, especially if they're speaking Spanish and then you speak in English. Issachar, sometimes they be doing Spanglish,
Right.
you know. But as long as everything is understood, it's pretty much y'all pretty much on the right frequency, so to speak, you
Right.
know. But yeah, you pretty much change perspective in a way.
Kai, you keep going.
It says two sets of findings published in 2010 demonstrate that even something as fundamental as who you like or do not like depends on the language in which you are asked.
Damn.
Mhm. It says the studies, one by Oludamini Ugunaki, it says, and his colleagues at Harvard, and another by Shai Danziger and his colleagues at Ben Gurion University of the Negev in Israel,
Kai,
looked at.
which Bond? If I can mention, Bond goes back to sun.
Mhm,
Negev is Nagab, which means the south. Nagab Shoyasha Allah, or
mhm,
Nagab Bayasha Allah.
mhm.
Nagab, the Nagab Desert in Israel.
Khan. It says looked at Hebraic French bilinguals in Morocco, Spanish English bilinguals in the U.S., and Arabic Hebrew bilinguals in Israel. In each case, testing the participants' implicit biases. For example, Hebraic Hebrew bilinguals were asked to quickly press buttons in response to words under various conditions.
I'll,
In one
I'll pick
condition,
up. I'll pick it up.
Khan.
It's a lot. It says how naturally. I'm skipping down. It says how naturally things such as positive traits in ethnic groups seem to go together in people's minds. Surprisingly, the investigators found big shifts in the involuntary automatic biases in bilinguals depending on the language in which they were tested. It says Arabic Hebrew bilinguals, for their part, showed more positive implicit attitudes toward Jews, so-called JOSs, when tested in Hebrew than when tested in Arabic. It says language also appears to be involved in many more aspects of our mental lives than scientists had previously supposed. People rely on language even when doing simple things like distinguishing patches of color, continuing dots on a screen, or orienting in a small room. My colleagues and I have found that limiting people's abilities to access their language faculties fluently by giving them a competing demanding verbal task such as repeating a news report, for instance, impairs their ability to perform these tasks. This means that categories and distinctions that exist in particular languages are meddling in our lives very broadly. What researchers have been calling thinking this whole time actually appears to be a collection of linguistic and non-linguistic processes, so they work both together. As a result, there may not be a lot of human thinking where language does not play a role. So it's not. It says as a result, there may not be a lot of human thinking where language does not play a role. So a vast majority of what you think is actually language. It says, because what do you use to tell what you're thinking? Essentially, you're going to explain it in a language. Because going back to
Mhm,
Montserrat 17, and I believe it was verse 5, it says to interpret the cogitations thereof, pretty much tell what you're thinking. So it says a hallmark feature of human intelligence is its adaptability and the ability to invent and rearrange conceptions of the world to suit changing goals and environments. One consequence of this flexibility is that great diversity of languages that emerged around the globe. Genesis 11 and 1 to 9. Each provides its own cognitive tool and encapsulate the knowledge and worldview over thousands of years within a culture. So language entails your culture. It says each contains a way of perceiving, categorizing, and making meaning in the world, an invaluable guidebook developed and honed by our ancestors, Ibar, from the past. It says research into how the languages we speak shape the way we think is helping scientists to unravel how we create knowledge and construct reality, and how we got to be as smart and sophisticated as we are. Which that's funny. It says, and this
mhm.
insight in turn helps us understand the very essence of what makes us human. You see, because humans from the ground, Adam, mankind, so essentially being tapped into where we come from, going into the stones, going into the herbs, going into the foods that you eat. Pretty much your language also plays a part in that as well, so that's why it's imperative, pray in the Hebrew, not saying that, we're required to journal, but it's a good idea to like journal in Hebrew, so we can learn the words. You might journal right to left, write the day from right to left. If you got a little journal, if you got a planner, you write it in Hebrew. Just little things we can implement, to get you back to that ancient mindset. Just things that we can pick up on. But if you ain't have nothing else, we can get that. You said what?
I said to get you back on track.
Yeah. If you ain't have nothing else, we can go to Genesis 11.
I had just one little thing, because these scientists, they talk about like the left brain, the right brain thing, right?
Yeah.
But pretty much when you go into the left brain, it says thinking in words, sequencing, linear thinking, mathematics, facts, logic. But when you go into the right brain, it says feelings, visualization, imagination, intuition, rhythm, holistic thinking, and arts.
Can I get precept for you?
Come on, you got it.
This is Proverbs 29:18, because it said visual. Damn, say it again. Visualization.
Yeah, visualization.
Proverbs 29:18. Where there is no vision, the people perish, but he that keepeth the law, happy is he. And that breaks it down itself. Where there is no vision, we thinking with our left brain. It's through the spirit and power that of Yahweh Bahasham Yahushua that we're able to abide. But if we're speaking on a literal standpoint, in order to visualize something, you got to be using your right brain. So reading from right to left, it's like, okay, I can feel this, I can see this. We can feel it through the spirit. Again, thanks to the Lord, the water Yahweh Bahasham Yahushua. But technically, you should be reading right to left in order to visualize it. So that's why it's a miracle. It's Yapah, Mawapath. It's a miracle that we got this knowledge.
Hey, and that's something that Esau is trying to detach you from, is that right side of your brain. Jake is very artistic. Jake really uses the right side of the brain a lot. But
right.
with Esau's, science and his studies, they require you to use your left side of the brain. Pretty much exactly what these Rothschilds and Rockefellers want. They don't want creators. They want workers.
Right.
They want people just to build their bridges and pretty much think with the left side of the brain instead of thinking with the right side of the brain. The scriptures tell us that Jacob is the former of all things. If Jacob gets back on that
frequency,
it goes back to that same frequency that they once were in. Jake will be operating at a much more higher level. You said Genesis
11 and verse 1.
It says, this is Genesis 11:1. It says, and the whole earth was of one language and of one speech.
Right. So the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. All right. Pretty much all the peoples, ha'aratas out of the earth. All right. Everybody that abides in the earth. It says one language. Which that word one is achad. All right. Which you go into the word achad. One pretty much is the chad. It goes into two things coming together, making 1 point, and you put the up there. That's the number one. So pretty much it's 1 point. So pretty much everybody was together. On the same vibration.
Verse 2, it says, and it came to pass as they journeyed from the east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And they said one to another, go to, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime had they for mortar. And they said, go to, let us build us a city, and a tower whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. Verse 5, it says,
if I can mention too, what do you keep going?
It says, and Yahweh came down to see the city and the tower, which the children of Israel, which the children of men builded. Verse 6, and Yahweh said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language. And this they begin to do. And now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do.
Right. I believe that was the Alahayim, the powers. Scattering the languages.
Verse 7, it says, go to, let us go down. Yeah, it says, let us, right? So
yep.
So it says, go to, let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So Yahweh scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city.
Right. So it says, so they can't understand one another's speech. So going into that article that we got, language tells a lot. It pretty much if you can't control the language, you can control emotions. Esau understand that. That's why essentially he does what he does. He's made this man's a mad scientist, because if you look at the word for the Hebrew word for fish, right? Look at the Hebrew word for fish, it's dog, da and ga. So pretty much what he's done is dog, he's put that on another animal, what we call hakalab, bahalashwan kadash, a dog in Hebrew, in the Holy Tongue. He'll call a kalab dog. So essentially we calling the dog a dog, when it's also supposed to be a fish, so it's confusion, which the fish gets its name from it wags the tail, but I mean, not the tail, the fin, but he gave that name to a dog, so pretty much calling the dog out of his name, pretty much throwing off the vibration. It has more power, than, what some can fathom, calling something out of his name, just like calling for so long we was called black, and we actually believed it, Black, Latino, Native American, You keep going.
Khan. Verse 9, it says, therefore is the name of it called Babel, because Yahweh. Khan. It says, because Yahweh did there confound the language of all the earth, and from thence did Yahweh scatter them abroad upon the face of all the earth.
Right. So I want to get that word for Babal. All right, and it reads, it says, Babal, confusion. That's what this devil thrives on, that right hand of falsehood, that witchcraft, which it comes from Balaw. When I go into this word Balaw, the root word Hasharash, the bar, to mix, mingle, confuse, confound, it says to fodder, it says fade. So pretty much confusion by mixing and to fade, That's why they got a term called Edenics. A lot of people in the so-called Christian church, they say, oh, well, what y'all speaking isn't true, but it is true, because why else would the term Edenics be around? And scholars don't refute the Paleo Hebrew Halashwan Kadash, But I'm gonna go back. It says by law, and it says to pour over, to pour together, to stain, to soil. So it's like you take if you make some oil, not no oil. If you made like a drink, you got like this just a shot. You take it, it's strong. You got power to it. But if you put juice in there and ice, it kind of waters it down. It's not as strong. It's still some remnants in there, but it ain't really as strong as it once was. Same thing with the Hebrew. Right. Can we get I'm gonna get this. This is Bon Sirach. This is Bon Sirach.
I got it. Want me to read it?
Yeah, Bon Sirach 1:1.
This is Bon Sirach 1:1. It says, all wisdom cometh from Yahweh, and is with him forever.
Right. It says all wisdom is from the Lord and is with him forever, because the Lord is all powerful. He's made everything, Going into the language, they like a lot of the words, it's like, okay, how did this come about? Like if you look at words like Salat, give me a second. Look at words like I'm gonna bring out these examples because this is in the scriptures, right? You got the letter Ga, all right? So Ga goes into Gamal as well as Ragal, you see. But it goes into that because you have the La and Ragal, all right? It comes from a word, or it comes from another letter, which is tongue. You see, going into Psalms chapter 36 and verse 11, it says, let not the foot of pride come against me. So this is going to the foot. It says, let not the foot of pride come against me, and let not the hand of the wicked remove me, because there's an actual foot in pride. The word for pride is Ga'ah. So God, being that it goes into a word, Ragal, the foot, actually it's pretty much set up in a way to where it's like, all right, a power had to make this. A man can't come up with this. Another example is going into Tahoyim, Psalms chapter 73. All right, 73 and verse 9, it says, they set their mouth against the heavens, and their tongue walketh through the earth. You see, so your tongue can't actually walk. Your feet is what walks. That's why when you put Ragal together, all right, Ra goes into man, God goes into that word God goes into make false and defamatory statements, you know, because that's essentially how Esau runs his mouth through the earth, roughly paraphrasing. And then that lie is what you use to talk, you see. So that's why Jake be like, you can always identify Jake because you got sayings like, let me see, like you can't hold water. You know, a camel holds water. You know, that mean you gonna run your mouth. How else do you run your mouth? You know, going back to the letter God, you know, because it's ultimately in our spirit, and you can ultimately tell that we the people of the Lord, you know, because these that go back to the scriptures. It said the tongue walketh through the earth. That's Jake all day, you know. It's shown in the language, and we say that in the English. No matter what language we speaking, it always go back to the scripture somehow, some way, you know.
Right. That's showing you that bloodline, man. That bloodline does carry certain traits.
Right, but just going back to the point that the Lord had to make this, you know.
Right.
It's too intricate, you know. You gotta take words from over here and then words over here and then put it together. Man couldn't have came up with that.
Nah,
you know.
Nah.
Was that it on Bara'ash, Genesis chapter 11?
Let me see. Yeah, that's pretty much it. It starts going into the generations after that.
Because after that, you know, that was during the time of Peleg, which is Palag, which means division. You know, so that's pretty much when the earth was divided. Baba Shah, we get one more, a couple more scriptures, and then that'll be it. Baba Shah, could you get Judges chapter 12 and verse 1-6? I'm gonna hit the bathroom real fast.
Khan. This is the book of Judges, chapter 12, and we'll start at verse 1, and it reads, And the men of Ephraim gathered themselves together and went northward, and said unto Jephthah, Wherefore passest thou over to fight against the children of Ammon, and didst not call us to go with thee? We will burn thine house upon thee with fire. It says, And Jephthah said unto them, I and my people were at great strife with the children of Ammon, and when I called you, ye delivered me not out of their hands. Verse 3, And when I saw that ye delivered me not, I put my life in my hands, and passed over against the children of Ammon, and Yahweh delivered them into my hand. Wherefore then are ye come up unto me this day to fight against me? Then Jephthah gathered together all the men of Gilead, and fought with Ephraim. And the men of Gilead smote Ephraim, because they said, Ye Gileadites are fugitives of Ephraim among the Ephraimites, and among the Manassites. Verse 5, And the Gileadites took the passage of Jordan before the Ephraimites, and it was so that when those Ephraimites which were escaped said, Let me go over, and the men of Gilead said unto him, Art thou an Ephraimite? If he said, Nay, then said they unto him, Say now, Shibboleth. And he
which
said,
is Shabbalah.
Khan, and he said, Shibboleth.
Sabalah.
Sabalah.
Yeah.
Khan, it says, For he could not frame to pronounce it right. Then they took him and slew him at the passage of Jordan. And there fell at that time of the Ephraimites 42,000.
Right. So ultimately, Shabbalah, while Sabalah, those are two examples of slang. Or Shabbalah is the correct term. Sabalah is what the dialect of the Ephraimites, Parayumya, are the Ephraimites. So pretty much, what happened there was showing a thing, how Jake is poetic in speech, and that comes from the Lord. You see, because if you go into the scriptures, things, it's a very poetic and a very hidden book, you know, and ultimately without the vision, you know, you're not going to be able to see the different secrets, dark parables, you know, things of that nature. But
right, because ultimately you had to be a part of that culture to understand it.
Right.
You know, you have to think in the ways that they thought back in those days. You know, I mean, but you know, even nowadays you have certain examples of that. You know, especially amongst the Latin tribes. You know, the way you pronounce things is different than others. But you know, just going back to what you were saying, you know, there's no way to understand it unless you put your mind into pretty much into the scriptures and into the time period that they were living in.
Right. That was pretty much all I had. You had anything else, bro?
Nah, that was it.
Hey, well, I don't want to Zabanayapa. Lord's will, that was a beautiful application through the Spirit. Water on Tazal, Dam Yashwan Tawab, a Lord's will. You all have a good day. We go ahead and close it out by saying, Call Halayim La, Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shabbat, Shem Chah Kodash. A double honor to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone that taught us his truth and rule well. And much respect to you, bros, that are pushing the truth with our righteousness. As it says, Shalom, Shalom. Yahweh Mahar, La Bachayim, Yaryam, may God speed to the elect. Shalom, Shalom.
Shalom.